Ex-Trump supporters. What was the last straw? Not me. But for a couple of family members. That church photo and the events leading up to it. Gas out the street for a photo op with a Bible. You cannot write this stuff. His response to the protests. I truly believe he has lost his freaking mind now. Personally, I was in the okay. I'm going to give him a chance because that's the right thing to do. I'm not going to judge someone before researching them camp. It didn't take long before I realized this dude is clueless. By that I mean before the end of my lunch break on the day he announced his campaign. I didn't know anything about him before. I never felt the need to read the news concerning him. Having gone back and seen the old news stories about him. Can't say I would blame anyone for not giving him a chance. However, my father was a full-on Donnie supporter ever since the escalator incident. On occasion he would admit things were bad, basically whenever he heard Donnie giving a speech. But my dad is a bit of a single issue voter and kept supporting Donnie and ignoring everything bad. The responses to the recent riots seem to have turned him into a Sanders supporter somehow. I'm not sure how he skipped Biden and went all the way to Sanders. But if I never have to hear my dad say Uncle Donnie again, then I'm happy. Not me. But a family member. He's a staunch Catholic and firm Republican. What happened in Lafayette Park was what finally did it for him. Having federal agents literally assault peaceful protesters so he could walk across the street for a photo op where he waved around an upside down Bible using a church as a prop was more than he could take. This is a good day for George Floyd. He is smiling down upon us was what did it for me. I've been ambivalent for a while. Liking certain things and disliking others. Was planning to abstain from the presidential part of the ballot. Or I might actually vote for Biden now instead. He's doing almost everything he said was wrong with the government and running the country like it's a reality show starring him and his family. When I started to realize that when he said he was a great businessman, he actually meant he was a great businessman only for his friends around the world in high places. I stopped mindlessly agreeing with everything my mom said. My Christian grandparents totally did a 180 on their support for him very recently after he had that photo op while holding the Bible after tear gassing protesters. My grandfather told me that if Jesus were in DC that day he would have been standing with the peaceful protesters and not with him. Edit, my first award. Thank you. I was frustrated when my grandfather supported Trump through all his scandals. But instead of saying I told you so, I supported his change of view. Sometimes it takes longer for certain people to change and I'm so glad he did. I had been a very stern Trump supporter since day one. Went to the rallies. Bought the shirts. Listened to Rush Limbaugh. Etc. COVID-19 was the final straw. A friend of mine put it in a good way. At some point, we decided it was bad to listen to scientists and college-educated professionals. I had been leaning away for a while and then he tweeted out when the looting starts. The shooting starts, he's a freaking idiot. He blames every problem on everyone, everything else. I mostly avoided the news and politics because it was such a contentious subject. I defended Trump saying, nobody's all bad. Clearly there must be some sort of misunderstanding. You're being too hard on him. The media just loves tearing people apart. One day, someone quoted some completely ludicrous, childish tweet of his. And, to prove they were exaggerating or taking things out of context, I looked for Trump on Twitter to find the context and actual quote. I was absolutely horrified. I learned a lot that day. I still read his Twitter feed regularly and continue to be impressed at how much pride he takes in being a completely horrible excuse for a human being. Mine was Charlottesville. I joined the Marine Corps and befriended a few minorities, and just talking with them and learning their experiences is what honestly changed my beliefs the most. Especially my sergeant. A Hispanic dude. He loved to talk about politics just as much as I did. But he was a liberal and I wasn't. Which was fine actually because we both were capable of talking and even disagreeing without it turning into an argument. We became good friends, even though it was against the UCMJ. It was technically fraternizing due to our ranks. We're both out now and still talk. I'm incredibly thankful for the experience honestly. It changed my total belief system for the better. I even attended a protest in Oakland the other week, where I got tear gassed and hit with a pepper ball, and have been to a couple smaller ones since. I'm proud of the progress I've made. Edit, spelling edit. Apparently my comment about the UCMJ was confusing. My B. I was taught the rule was you can hang it with other Marines to ranks above or 2 below. I wouldn't say I supported him because I didn't vote in 2016. I didn't like my options, already learned my lesson. No need for a lecture. When he was elected I thought maybe he wouldn't be too bad. And honestly didn't give a poop about who the president was because it never seemed to make a difference in my life. But my last straw was his bizarre comments and rants about wind turbines. And his overall anti-environment stance. Of course his handling of the pandemic and George Floyd protests have fueled a hatred for him that I didn't know I was capable of having for a politician. All I can do to get rid of him is vote and I'm making damn sure I do it this time. Frick him. There's a horse. Loose in the hospital. John Mulaney. Kid gorgeous at Radio City. His act and how he broke it down really put into perspective how ridiculous everything that came out of Trump's mouth was. Most ex-Trump supporters just hated Hillary more. Here's a reminder for current Trump supporters who might be on the fence, or not, when you actually cast your vote. It's just you and no one else there with you in the booth. If you're worried about what your family, friends etc. will think if you tell them you're voting blue, then you can tell them whatever you need to. Just remember that come November when the choice is literally in front of you on the actual ballot, it's up to you and nobody else. I'll admit was on the maybe fence for a while. I liked the idea that he didn't give a frick, wasn't being pressured by lobbyists, and had some party agnostic ideas. I'm over it now. He's a textbook demagogue. Blames the media if they point out lies. Appeals to anger. Blames the others. And answers confidently in front of the camera. Moreover, he can't control himself. He reminds me of my dog. Her prey drive is through the roof. If she's off leash she will bolt after worthless floating shopping bags in the road. Even if it means running into traffic and potentially killing herself. Originally, I supported Trump in 2016 because I was pressured by members of my family, who are very conservative and, to be honest, a little racist. I continued to support him despite what was going on until they moved across the country in 2018. During the big shutdown in 2019, my belief in Trump started to fall in some areas and I looked more into him, and all the nasty poop he was involved in just destroyed my confidence for him. In the past few months, his handling of the pandemic and George Floyd's murder made me hate him. Looking back, I realize I was very wrong and very misguided. And I'll do anything and everything to help get his ass out in November. I was never a supporter so much as a conservative-leaning centrist who didn't see a better option. My last straw was last week. James Mattis, a man I hold in high enough regard that he compares to some of my favorite historic figures, had some choice words about Trump in the past week. Donald Trump is the first president in my lifetime who does not try to unite the American people, does not even pretend to try. Instead he tries to divide us. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years of this deliberate effort. We are witnessing the consequences of 3 years without mature leadership. It was this statement, combined with Trump using federal troops to violently disband a peaceful protest just so he could have a photo op. I'll 100% be voting Democrat for the first time this year. I have some family who have the same thoughts BTW. One of them being far more Republican than I ever have been. PS. I always figured I vote Democrat at some point. I just hoped it would have been because they presented a better candidate. Not because the GOP sank lower. It was a very rough ride on the Trump train, but the final straw was the agriculture export tariff he put on our goods going to China. We sell our summer wheat to them. Our buyers went to Russia. 4 silos rotted. $3 million US. Edit. Oh. Also forgot this. The China export tariff as well. Cost a friend's business some $28 million in fabrication dealings. They just bought all new tooling to ramp up production. Had to lay off some 100 people they hired to operate the new section. I watched the When They See Us documentary. I was pretty pissed off. Then the Iranian crisis. I really was sitting watching the news waiting for war. When the plan blew up I was like, here we fricking go. As a member of a family that was killed by their fascist government. The absolute final straw was him talking about shooting civilians and using the military to occupy cities. I will not let the horrors of the 1940s happen here. My grandmother sacrificed a lot to come here. Hell no. Just a quick reminder to anyone who successfully convinces someone to change their mind, be cool about it. If a former Trump supporter says he's no longer their candidate, don't tell them I told you so. Don't brag about how you knew all along. Say cool. I think you made the right choice. This goes for life too. But it's especially important in politics. A friend of mine voted for him. I argued with him all the time about it and he never really had any explanation for it except one time he said I like him because he just doesn't care. Like he's the fricking Potter, are you kidding me? But he dropped his support after Puerto Rico. He said that was the last straw, seeing him throw paper towels into the crowd like he was playing basketball, cause it showed he obviously didn't care about anyone else at all. I wanted the anti-politician. Turns out he isn't human. I was never 100% Trump. Thought he was just charismatic. Until I read one of his speeches. Then the impeachments. Then the tear gassing citizens. Then the calling a 75-year-old victim of police brutality a terrorist. I am now anti-Trump. If Democrats added a literal potato to the ballot, I would vote for it. When I heard him bragging about grabbing women's genitals. No Christian. None can support someone like that. I just have to comment. Seeing people say they had a last straw gives me hope. I was the person who sadly cried when he got elected. My husband still supports him. It's causing many long days and night. He finally said he may not vote this election because he doesn't like Biden. It's the most progress I've seen. I was in the hopeful but not excited category. I'm his first month he was whining about the inauguration crowds. And was insecure that Obama had a larger inauguration crowd than he did. I thought, oh frick. If he's throwing a tantrum over this when there's serious poop he needs to focus on as president, we are in trouble. And it's been all downhill since then. Most of my co-workers are Trump fans. They've finally admitted he's a horrible human being. They'll probably still vote for him as they rail against socialism and think it's the same thing as communism, but admitting he's a poopy person is a start. Yes. They all cashed their stimulus checks. Threatening to deploy the military against protesters. The only reason the military should ever deploy on US soil is to counter an invasion or armed insurrection that the National Guard couldn't handle first. This whole George Floyd situation. He is completely ignoring facts behind police brutality and is blindly supporting police. Most of the other things that have happened I haven't had a huge issue with or was kind of on the fence about. But if you're going to advocate for killing protesters, or just looters, I'm out. People were protesting a month and a half ago about the corona lockdowns. And most of those people had guns and nothing happened and it was encouraged by the president. All of a sudden it's about police brutality against unarmed people and he chooses to fight them. Whether he agrees with the protests or not. Threatening to kill them is absolutely disgraceful. had first supported Trump from the idea that it was kind of satirical he was being placed into such a serious position of power. So really, my support came from seeing how far such mockery America was willing to keep allowing. Well, when someone seriously challenged my thinking about my support for Trump, I had absolutely nothing to say other than, well, it's just funny. I knew I didn't actually support him when presented with the reality of what he was doing as president. I realized then it was time to grow up and really formulate serious opinions about issues in the world. Still feel like a fool.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.